The next question, kind of, I want you to respond to is those thoughts you've had, or with, or discussions you've had with family members, where it's discussed. I wish the schools would understand the following about our history. So, what are the most essential understandings today's educators need to have regarding the educational experiences of Native students or the history of the American Indian community in Donut County? What is it that you really want the schools to understand?
I don't think there's any way you can understand unless you actually um, go to families' homes and visit homes and see where they're coming from and see what impacts their lives. Um, I, when I was teaching at Klamath River Early College, going into those homes taught me the most about their experiences and what they're facing day to day. Um, and and developing those relationships with the families was invaluable. I think that it can take you from a place of, oh, this is a student behaving badly, to, I know what probably happened this morning in this kid's house, to lead him to this type of behavior. Um, I mean, I'm sure that many of you have heard the stories about, kids not getting proper breakfast in the morning. Um, but there's some things, and I come from a family too who uh, experiences some deep poverty. I mean, it's things like not having a bed or even a home or clean clothes, and oftentimes there's depression or substance abuse in the home. Parents aren't getting up, they're not getting the kids, and then there's all this stress in the morning, and um, uh, uh, it's it's really quite astounding, I think, what many of the students are capable of accomplishing. They're highly resilient, and once you gain that appreciation, then you're looking at it from a different angle. And a lot of this is stuff that we learn, as educators anyway. But in the Native community, there's an added layer, right, of this historical trauma. There's many added layers of the historical trauma of, this abject poverty and these incredible unemployment rates. And then the other piece is, that's looking at it from a deficit standpoint. But I think the other enlightening thing would be to see the resources that they actually have. And sometimes those culture resources and those family resources are in direct conflict with our education system. So one of the examples would be our ceremonies, our fishing, which happen to peak right about now in the beginning of September when school begins, right? So a lot of these kids right now who are living on the reservation or have families who fish, that's what they're thinking about now. They're not thinking about going back to school. They're thinking about, when are these fish coming in, okay? And some of them are, off at deerskin dance and, various other things. And, in my own experience, trying to maintain my Yurok-ness is almost like having a second job. I mean, it's time intensive. So a lot of these kids are also dealing with that.
And I would add to that. I think that it's really what I would like the education to understand is that we want you to educate them for our world too, not just for your world.
Mm-hmm.
Our world has a lot of demands on them, and how are they going to do that and be successful in both worlds? You know, and that's what I'm interested in. I want to know how to do that. Or you look at, say, the justice system, and when I first came home, we were building the system, we're talking about it, and depending on your age, you're either Perry Mason or Law and Order, and that's what you think justice is about. You can guess which one I looked at, but you can't say it out loud. But here you have this whole other world that they have to get along in. You know, and when a student gets in trouble, like a student did recently, how I deal with them is going to be different than how the courts up here deal with them. And what I tried to explain when I first came home was, okay, I sat on the bench for years, and the whole goal was, if I knew you, I was not going to be your judge. Wouldn't happen. That's justice by strangers, okay? I came home and they were like, well, you know me, you can't be my judge, or you know that person. I'm like, I know that person, I know you, I know your mother, I know your grandmother. And we're village people. And when we were in the village, we had disputes, and we never ran to some stranger and said, settle these disputes. Do you think we never had disputes? I don't think so, because humans aren't like that. So what you had was a different system of justice. And then the resolution is different because the system is different. You know, so what I'm working on with people is to say, okay, here's the system, and if they want to have the system, go with God, my people, you know, and if you think it's working for you, have a good time. Over here, now we're trying to build this system. What I'm saying to them is you have these values, and those values were you make it right in that community, or you have a problem. And so from those values, you have to develop practices. Now, but for the invasion, we would have, like every other culture, just plodded along, changing how we do things, you know, by whatever happens. But that didn't get a chance to happen. So now we're jumping back over into this value system and trying to create practices that are consistent with those values. Much different approach. And I get, you know, that 200 years ago we didn't have meth. I get a lot of, you know, that there's a lot of things that I did not have to deal with. But I do believe that those values can still inform those practices. So what I need educators to do is to help us try to be in both of those things. And it is very time intensive. You know, it's very hard to get a job where you can go, let me call you back because I have to go to dance for 10 days. They're like, oh yeah, okay, when you get your vacation time built up, perhaps, talk to me about it. But, you know, and you can't be calling in sick when they know you're at dance because they're going to get in trouble. I mean, it's, you know, all these things. So that part of it is to say, okay, what do you need to have these kids learn? Because I need them to know that. I need to know them to know there's not just two different justice systems, there's more, you know, but these are the ones that we're operating in. So we do have a whole other system, and we're getting back kids who are, and that's the whole danger of sending kids off to school, is you get them back and they, you know, they're lunkheads. I mean, to a large extent, they don't know how to engage in the community, or they have a practice, or they think being a lawyer is then being aggressive and having to fight with you. You know, and these kids got in trouble earlier for doing something. You know, I sent people out to talk to them. They had essentially, they had gone on a hike to the high country. They had used backpacks. They had left something in a backpack that shouldn't have been in there, and it caused all of this confusion. Well, the person came forward and said, I did it. And so we worked out how they were going to pay back and make that right with everybody that they offended in that process. That's a long process because they have to, one, own up to it in family and in community, and to every adult that they offended in that process. And by the time they're done with that, they're pretty much done with that. You know, and my whole goal in that situation is to say, you know, I have made a lot of mistakes in my life. You're going to make mistakes. The thing about making mistakes is you must make it right. You have to take responsibility. I don't expect you to be error-free, but I do expect you to take responsibility. You know, and then I will help you come back from that, which is a very different thing, you know, than to say, okay, well, I only did the error if I can prove you did the error. No, you know whether you did it or not. Just tell me. And for the most part, when I have people in court, I would have to say, we have the ability to have trials. And I'll say, do you want a trial or you just want to talk about it? And I would say 97% of the people say, let's just talk about it. They read everything, they talk about it, they say what they think their part is. The other person says what they think their part is, even if it's an officer, and we sort it out. How are we going to make this not happen again? You know, if I find somebody, I'll say, okay, this is your first offense. If you don't do this again for the rest of the season, you don't have to pay this. You know, but if you do it again, that shows you didn't learn from this situation. You know, so it's really about, okay, how are you going to be in community? How are you going to be in community? Because what you did isn't just an offense against, you know, some state, whatever. It's an offense against community because these are community rules. You know, so you have to figure out how to bring that back in, and that's different. You know, and so what I would like the schools to look at, or the education, is to go, okay, how are we going to educate these kids to be in two worlds? You know, and at some point, how are we going to educate their friends who are not Yurok to be in two worlds? Because we are not going to go forward by ourselves, either one of us up here, and that has to be made 100% clear. You know, and avoiding each other is not the answer for that. You know, we don't have things that integrate. We don't know how to solve a problem together because we don't know enough about ourselves or each other.